Picture this. You're dating an absolutely gorgeous woman. She's smart, funny, and every guy in the room turns to look at her when she walks by. You're treating her like the queen she is, buying her flowers, taking her on expensive dates, texting her good morning every single day. You're being the perfect gentleman your mother raised you to be. But here's what's happening behind the scenes. She's slowly losing interest in you, and you have no idea why. What I'm about to tell you will completely shatter everything you think you know about women and relationships. The uncomfortable truth that 97% of men refuse to accept is this: for a woman to genuinely love you, desire you, and stay loyal to you, she must never feel completely secure in your affection. She must always feel like she's reaching upward to deserve your attention. Now, before you close this video, thinking I'm some kind of manipulative pickup artist, let me be crystal clear about what I mean. I'm not talking about being cruel or abusive. I'm talking about understanding the psychological mechanisms that drive female attraction at the deepest level. And if you stick with me for the next 15 minutes, I'm going to reveal the exact psychology behind why women lose interest in men who treat them well. And more importantly, how you can use this knowledge to create the kind of deep, lasting attraction that most men only dream of. This is going to be one of the most important videos you'll ever watch about women's psychology, so pay attention. Let's start with the first golden rule. Women are biologically programmed to seek men with higher survival value than themselves. This isn't something they consciously decide. It's hardwired into their DNA after millions of years of evolution. Back in our ancestral environment, women who chose men with superior resources, strength, and social status were more likely to survive and raise healthy offspring. The women who fell for the nice guy who brought her flowers every day, their genetic line died out because that nice guy couldn't protect her from the neighbouring tribe or provide during harsh winters. This biological programming is called hypergamy, and it's still active in every woman's subconscious mind today. Even though we live in modern times with safety nets and grocery stores, her brain is still operating on ancient software. When a woman perceives that a man's value is lower than or equal to her own, her attraction circuitry literally shuts down. For hundreds of thousands of years, women had to be extremely selective about their mating choices because pregnancy made them vulnerable for 9 months, and raising children required massive resources. A woman who chose poorly could literally die, along with her offspring. This created an intense selection pressure for women to be attracted only to men who demonstrated superior genetics and resources. These ancient programs are still running in the background of every interaction you have with women. When you act needy, desperate, or overly accommodating, you're sending signals that would have indicated weakness and poor survival prospects to our ancestors. Her subconscious receives these signals and responds by reducing attraction. This brings us to the concept of sexual market value, or SMV. Think of dating like a marketplace where everyone has a certain value based on their attractiveness, resources, personality, and social status. The cruel reality is that women are only genuinely attracted to men whose SMV they perceive as higher than their own. Here's where most guys get it completely wrong. They think SMV is about your job, your car, your muscles, or your height. While these factors matter, they're not the primary drivers of attraction. A woman's perception of your SMV is determined much more by how you carry yourself, how you interact with her, and most importantly, how much you seem to need her validation. Let me give you a real example. I once knew a guy who was a successful lawyer, drove a BMW, and was in great shape. He would wine and dine women at expensive restaurants, shower them with compliments, and make himself available whenever they called. Despite having all the external markers of high value, women would consistently lose interest in him after a few weeks. Compare that to another guy I knew who was a bartender, lived in a studio apartment, but had an abundance mindset. He would take women to casual coffee shops, playfully tease them, and never seemed fazed if they didn't respond to his texts immediately. Women would become obsessed with him, constantly trying to win his approval and attention. The difference? The second guy understood that perceived value is more powerful than actual value. He carried himself like a man with options, while the first guy's behavior screamed, "Please don't leave me." Women are constantly scanning for social cues about your value relative to other men. They're looking at how you handle rejection, how you respond to their tests, how you carry yourself in social situations. These behavioral cues matter more than your bank account or your biceps. Here's the second golden rule. The less certain a woman is about your interest level, the more mental energy she invests in thinking about you. This is basic psychology. We value what we're uncertain about and take for granted what we're sure of. When you immediately show your hand by being overly available, constantly texting, and making it obvious that you're completely smitten, you remove all mystery and challenge from the equation. She no longer has to work for your attention because you're freely giving it away. But when you maintain some level of uncertainty about your feelings, something magical happens. Her mind starts racing with questions. Does he like me? Why didn't he text me back? What is he doing right now? This mental occupation is the foundation of attraction. Let me paint you a picture of how this works in practice. You meet a woman at a social event, have a great conversation, and exchange numbers. The typical guy would text her the next day saying something like, "Hey, I had such an amazing time talking to you last night. You're incredible. When can I see you again?" The guy who understands interest concealment waits 3 days, then sends a simple text. "Coffee Tuesday at 3. No excessive enthusiasm, no validation, just a clear invitation that demonstrates he's interested but not desperate. Here's the psychological principle at work. Humans are naturally drawn to intermittent reinforcement. When we receive consistent, predictable rewards, we quickly adapt and lose interest. But when rewards are unpredictable, we become psychologically hooked. Your attention operates on the same principle. When you give it consistently and predictably, she adapts to it and loses interest. When you give it intermittently and unpredictably, she becomes psychologically hooked on getting more of it. Think of your attention and approval as a currency. Like any currency, its value is determined by scarcity. When you give your validation too freely, it becomes worthless. When you make it something that must be earned, it becomes precious. Most men make the fatal mistake of front-loading all their validation. They compliment her constantly, agree with everything she says, and make it clear that she's the most amazing woman they've ever met. What they don't realize is that they just spent their entire emotional budget in the first week. Women are incredibly skilled at reading your level of investment through your behavior. She doesn't need you to say, "I love you." She can see it in how quickly you respond to her texts, how you light up when she walks into the room, how you rearrange your schedule to accommodate her whims. Here's what you need to understand. Women want to feel special, but they want to earn that feeling. When you give it away for free, it loses all meaning. When she has to work for your approval, suddenly it becomes worth something. I know a guy who was dating a model, absolutely stunning woman who was used to men falling over themselves to please her. Instead of showering her with compliments about her looks like every other guy, he would occasionally acknowledge her intelligence when she said something insightful, or praise her sense of humour when she made him laugh. The key was that his validation was conditional on her behaviour, not just her existence. She had to earn his approval through her actions, which made it infinitely more valuable than the empty compliments she received from other men. One of the fastest ways to destroy attraction is to become predictable. When she knows exactly how you'll respond to everything she does, when she can predict your schedule down to the minute, when you become a known quantity, her interest will inevitably fade. This is why so many relationships start passionate and exciting, but gradually become boring and routine. The man, in his effort to be a good boyfriend, becomes utterly predictable. He calls at the same time every day, takes her to the same types of places, and responds to her the same way every time. Predictability signals to her subconscious that she has completely figured you out, which means she no longer needs to invest mental energy in understanding you, and when she stops investing mental energy in you, she stops feeling attracted to you. This is why the bad boy stereotype is so powerful. It's not that women are attracted to men who treat them poorly, they're attracted to men who are unpredictable, who keep them guessing, who don't follow the script of what a typical guy would do. Here's something that will blow your mind. Women are constantly testing your interest level, not your competency. Most men think women are testing to see if they're man enough, or if they can handle her attitude. But that's not what's happening at all. She's testing to see how much you like her. Every time she acts a little cold, every time she mentions another guy, every time she seems unimpressed with something you did, she's gauging your reaction to see if you'll chase her validation. When you fail these tests by immediately trying to win her approval back, you're essentially telling her, "I like you more than you like me." And once she knows that, the power dynamic shifts permanently in her favour. Let me break down some specific examples. The comparison test. She mentions how attractive another man is or talks about an ex-boyfriend. The failed response is to get jealous or try to compete. The correct response is to be genuinely unbothered and maybe even agree with her. The availability test. She suggests plans and then cancels at the last minute. The failed response is to immediately try to reschedule or express disappointment. The correct response is to say, no problem, and make other plans. The attitude test. She gives you attitude or acts cold. The failed response is to ask what's wrong or try to cheer her up. The correct response is to mirror her energy and be equally cold until she corrects her behaviour. These tests aren't conscious manipulations. They're unconscious behaviours driven by her need to assess your value. When you consistently pass these tests by remaining unbothered and maintaining your frame, you signal that you're not desperate for her approval. When a woman perceives that a man's value is lower than her own, her body literally starts to reject him on a biological level. This isn't conscious. It's happening in her subconscious mind. Her brain starts sending signals that this man is not genetically superior enough to be worth reproducing with. This manifests as a loss of sexual desire, increased irritability around him, and a general feeling that something is off about the relationship. This is why so many women in relationships stop being intimate with their partners. It's not that they don't love them, it's that their biology is telling them not to reproduce with someone they perceive as weak or inferior. Her subconscious thinks that you became weak, that you can't stand up to her, therefore you can't stand up for her. Women are survival creatures, and when she looks at you, you're now a bad bet for her survival. Understanding this can be painful, but it's also liberating. When you realise that her loss of interest isn't personal, it's biological, you can start to make the changes necessary to reactivate her attraction. Here's a fascinating psychological phenomenon. When a woman is uncertain about your interest level, she switches from covert to overt communication. Let me explain what this means. Normally, women communicate covertly, meaning they hint at what they want rather than stating it directly. She might say, I'm cold instead of, can you give me your jacket? Or, I'm hungry instead of, let's go eat. But when she's worried about losing you, she switches to overt communication. She starts being more direct, more affectionate, more obvious about her feelings. She'll text you things like, I miss you so much, or I can't wait to see you tonight. This shift happens because her hypergamous instincts are telling her that you might be higher value than she initially thought, and she needs to make sure she doesn't lose you to another woman. When a woman really likes a guy, she will return texts on time, call you back, always check in how your day is going, and genuinely do things to make you feel like she likes you. She switches to overt